Okay, how's everyone? Let's get started. Okay, so this week's Parsha, as you saw in the title, we're going to be talking about the laws of how to kosher utensils, a kitchen, how to do that, and we're going to learn the psychological and spiritual dimension of this mitzvah. So it's based in this week's portion. Let me tell you the story of this week's portion. The story is, this week is a double portion, by the way. We learn the last two portions of the book of Numbers, Matot and Massei. In Matot, the story is part of this. It's a long portion, these two together, probably the longest combination. But one story in it is the story of the war that the Jewish people have to fight. Just before they go into the land of Israel, they battle against the Midianites. They went to war against Midian. If you know the story that we read in the previous portions, that a man by the name of Bilam, who was a Midianite prophet, schemed and planned to annihilate the Jewish people. And he advised Balak, the king of Moab, how to destroy the Jewish people, and they almost were successful. And as a result, God told Moses to tell the Jewish people to mobilize and go fight and destroy Midian. They go out, 12,000 soldiers, troops, and when they come back with incredible amount of spoils of war, booty. And the Torah tells us the following, and I'm going to read a couple of verses. When they come back with all these items, this is in Numbers chapter 31, verse 21. And it reads as follows. Elazar the priest Elazar was the son of Aaron, who by now died already, and Elazar his son took over the high priesthood. And Elazar said to the soldiers returning from battle, "This is the rule that God commanded Moses." And he basically tells them as follows. The gold, the silver, the copper, the iron, the tin, and the lead, they brought back all kinds of stuff from this war. And he says, whatever of these materials, whatever is used in fire, here's what the problem was. The problem was that they got pots, they got pans, they got all kinds of things that they brought back with them. And they wanted to use it in their own, to use it in their homes, in their kitchens. So Elazar told them, you got a problem. Because these came from the Midianite people. And the Midianites were not known to keep kosher. So you got a problem. You can't use those pots and pans and utensils, forks, spoons, whatever else it was. So he tells them like this, that from the gold, the silver, the copper, the iron, the tin, and the lead, whatever is used, and listen carefully, whatever is used in fire, he says, you must pass through fire. And then it will be purged. But it must be purified with sprinkling water. It must be immersed to purify it. Then he continues, and I'll explain in a minute, whatever vessel is not used in fire, you need immerse it in water. What he's talking about over here is like this. You probably know that when you buy a utensil, and you go to Bed Bath & Beyond or to wherever, and you buy a pot. Where do you buy pots? In Target, wherever you buy it. You have to take that pot and you have to, even if it's brand new, you have to immerse it in a mikveh. You know that? You have to dip it in the water of a mikveh before a Jew can use it. This is for ritual purity reasons. But what happens if you buy a used pot? Or in this case, you came back from war with the Midianites and there's so many pots and pans and all kinds of utensils that you can use, barbecues, you name it. Are you just able to wash it out in your sink and then cook meals with it? Of course not, because those utensils are treif, as we call them, they're treif, right? They're not kosher. How do you make something that's not kosher into kosher? Well, today it's very easy. You pick up the phone, you call the rabbi and said, I need you to come kosher my kitchen. How much does it cost? He comes over, you pay him, and it's done. But those days, it wasn't so simple. People did it themselves, or better yet, what?
Didn't they bury the spoons and the pots and everything? Didn't they bury them?
Where? In that story of the Midian?
I don't know, in the soil.
No, they didn't bury it. No, you don't bury it. You don't bury it. You kosher it. And this is, we get the laws from kashrut in this week's portion. This is what Elazar told them. He said to them, it depends how that item became treif. What makes an item treif? Let's try to understand that a little bit. You have a perfectly clean spoon. Why is it not kosher? You rubbed it, scrubbed it with Brillo, with soap, you name it, disinfectants. It's clean, spotless. What's the problem? Why is it not kosher? You know the reason?
The food was not kosher.
Which food?
The food that the Midianites ate.
So you ate with the spoon a piece of, let's say, a chicken soup that wasn't kosher chicken, and the spoon is now not kosher. What made it not kosher? Because there's not kosher soup on it. But what happens if you put it in the sink and you cleaned it, you scrubbed it? It's no longer there. There's not a trace of the non-kosher soup on the spoon. Why is it? Why can't you use that same spoon now for your own kosher soup?
You have to purify it.
What do you mean? Why do you have to purify it? So
Like
it's
the
not
mikveh.
because what?
Like the mikveh. When you do the mikveh, the women they do the mikveh after you know.
So you're saying that we have to take those spoons and put it in the mikveh,
in the water, yes.
in the water. So that's what makes it kosher. So you're telling me that if I buy now a set of china or a set of spoons, gold spoons from I got a good buy in an auction, and it was used for non-kosher food, all I have to do is go to the mikveh and dunk it in the mikveh. But that is not enough. You're right, it has to go to the mikveh, but that will not suffice. You can put it in the mikveh a million. You can put it you can put it in the mikveh a million times, and it's still not kosher. Why not? And if you'll understand why it's not kosher, you'll understand how to make it kosher. What's the problem with this spoon? Why is it not kosher? And it's crucially you understand this.
Because the food went into the material.
The food you're telling me is absorbed in the metal of the spoon. How did it get absorbed in the metal of the spoon?
It's porous.
So if let me understand this, and this is an important discussion. So let's say I'm eating yogurt. It's not kosher yogurt. Okay, let's say I'm eating a non-nachatz, God forbid, I would never do that. But someone eats a non-kosher yogurt. Takes out in the morning, he gets up and he goes to his fridge, takes out a yogurt from the fridge, he dips in the spoon into the yogurt. The spoon till that moment was kosher. It was a brand new spoon. He put it into the yogurt and ate the yogurt. Is that spoon now not kosher because the yogurt wasn't kosher?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Now, if I go to the sink and I wash it out good and I got rid of all the sediment, all the leftovers of the yogurt, spotless clean, is it still not kosher?
It's not kosher.
Yeah.
You have
Why?
to-
Tell me why. Because you're telling me that the yogurt got absorbed into the spoon. Is that what you're telling me?
Into the metal.
Into the metal of the
You
spoon.
have to leave it 24 hours.
Okay. You have to leave it 24 hours, and then you don't have to do anything, and then you can eat with it. So let me clarify this for you. I don't have to keep you in the dark. It's not that complicated. The answer is like this. How does something get absorbed into a spoon? A non-kosher taste. Let's say the non-kosher taste of the soup. You're eating chicken soup with a non-kosher chicken soup with a spoon. The chicken soup got absorbed into the spoon. How did it get absorbed into the spoon? What makes something get absorbed into metal? You know what the answer is? Heat. Heat, exactly. The heat of the boiling chicken soup caused that taste of the chicken soup to be absorbed in the spoon, and therefore, no matter how much you clean that spoon, below the surface, behind the wall, there's lingering a taste of non-kosher meat. Now, what do I care if it's behind the wall of the spoon, as long as it's not on the spoon, the surface of the spoon? Because the next time you eat kosher chicken soup with that same spoon, the absorbed non-kosher taste of what's in the walls will get expunged and go into your kosher soup and make it treif. You get it or not?
Yes.
Does that make sense? Okay. So it gets absorbed first, and then when you apply heat to it, you put it into your next chicken soup, and your kosher chicken soup is going to now extract the non-kosher taste of the chicken soup that was there in the wall of the spoon, and now it's going to go into your soup, and hence you got a problem. Right? Of course. So Elazar tells the Jewish people like this: you got to get rid of that non-kosher Midian taste. The non-kosher taste that's in all these pots and pans you brought from Midian, you got to kosher it. So he lays down a rule. It's an interesting rule, and I want you to pay attention to this. He says to them like this: any substance, he says, so the Jews asked him, how do we kosher these things? He says like this: if the non-kosher substance was absorbed into the walls, let's say a pot, let's take a pot for example. It was absorbed into the pot walls through boiling water, right? Like in the case of a soup, right? The walls of the pot did not touch the fire. All it touched was boiling water, right? The boiling water of the soup. That boiling water boiling soup caused the walls of the pot to absorb the non-kosher taste. Very good. All you have to do then is take that same pot, put in boiling water into it, fill it up to the top, and boil water. And what happens? The same boil caused the walls of the pot to absorb the non-kosher taste. Another round of boiling water will extract the same taste. And now, once you did that, the vessel, the pot, goes back to being kosher. Okay? But what happens if you have a barbecue, yeah? You have a barbecue, and you fried on it non-kosher beef. You roasted on it, you barbecued non-kosher meat. Now, this is a problem even more. This is a bigger problem. Why? Because in this case, it wasn't so in the grill, in the what do you call it? The pieces of metal of the barbecue. What is that called? The grill. Okay, whatever it's called. You know what I'm talking about. That now absorbed also the taste of non-kosher beef, non-kosher meat. But how did it absorb it? What caused it to absorb it?
The heat.
What heat? What level heat? Not boiling water. The very fire itself. The very fire itself. The fire itself contacted the meat, and the grill. So the grill absorbed a non-kosher taste of meat through fire itself, not through boiling water. In that case, you can't just put that grill into boiling water, because the heat level that caused it to absorb the non-kosher taste was much stronger than boiling water. And therefore, in order to extract and make it a kosher grill, to get rid of the taste that lingers in the walls of the grill, you have to apply actual fire. How do you do that? With a blowtorch. You take a blowtorch and you blowtorch every part of the surface of the grill till it becomes white hot. till it becomes white or red hot. And once that happens, it expunges the negative, the non-kosher taste, and then now you have a kosher grill. Make sense?
Yes.
Perfect. So that's what Allah tells them. Anything that passed through fire, you have to pass through fire. And anything that passed through water, boiling water, you have to go and put it into boiling water. You have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My grandmother, if she made a mistake with the fleischadik and milk, she would bury the spoon in the ground. That's why I asked that.
Right. And what would she do? She would never use it again?
I don't know.
After 24 hours,
She would leave it there for a while.
So there are some instances where they say to stick something into the ground for 24 hours. There is something like that, but that's not so simple. Well, I don't want to get into all the details now. I'm just giving you over the basics of what Allah are told the Jewish people. Now, what happens if it wasn't, you didn't really, you drank a cup of cold milk, non-kosher cold milk, right? And never, there was no heat. Did the walls of the cup absorb the non-kosher milk? If the answer is if there's no heat, the walls don't absorb anything. The only way it absorbs is through application of heat. So therefore, in the case that I gave you before, I went to my fridge in the morning and ate. I took out a non-kosher yogurt and I ate it with a kosher spoon. Did the kosher spoon become not kosher? It doesn't. It remains kosher because once you wash out the spoon and there's nothing left of the yogurt, nothing is on the surface of the spoon. Nothing got absorbed under the walls of the spoon, so it's a kosher spoon. You can use it again as long as you wash it. Those are the three things you have to do. The three possibilities of koshering items, and anything you kosher, that is the rule. It absorbs. It extracts the same way it absorbed. With the same heat level it absorbed, that's how it extracts and you get rid of the pain. Okay. That is the technical, legal aspect of this law. Now I want to discuss this on a deeper level. On the soul level, and we all know that in Judaism, every single law, every verse of the Torah, every aspect and every concept can be understood on two levels, on many levels. There's the more basic practical level, the technical level. And there are a lot of people that their whole relationship with Judaism is technical. What do I have to do? And what do I not have to do? And they live their life that way. But then there is a deeper level. There is the idea of understanding every law and every idea of Torah on a more spiritual level, the soul of the law. Till now we spoke the body of the law, the technical part of the law. But then there's a whole deeper soul. What's the neshama of this halacha, of this idea of koshering? So, let me lay it out to you. There are three important aspects that we learn from this law. One, what lies below the surface is very important. Very important. Because even though you clean, for example, in the case of a spoon, you can clean it from today till tomorrow with soap, with Brillo, with Scotch-Brite, you name it. Scrub it off, but still, you may think that externally it looks beautiful, it looks kosher, there's nothing left of the non-kosher thing. It's not the case. Behind the scenes lingers a non-kosher taste. And that will come out one day. That will, one day when the heat is applied to it, it will expunge, it will give out that taste. And when it does, it's going to render your whole kosher pot non-kosher. So what lies below the surface is extremely important. Second point, if you absorbed something bad, you could extract it. You could get rid of it. You should never say, oh, it became treif, it's treif forever. You could get rid of the internal negative taste, the internal non-kosher taste. You can expunge it. And the third point that we learn from this is that exactly the way it became not good, not treif, that's exactly how it will become kosher. The way it absorbed is exactly the way it will extract. Now let's talk about this on the psychological, spiritual level. There are a lot of people that live their lives for others. Let me give you an example. They make the mistake thinking that as long as my things look good on the outside, it's all good. What goes on in the inside is not important. What's important to them is how people view them, how they look towards the outside. They can make up and make up any flaw they have on their face with a little makeup. They can make up and cover up every flaw they have internally with a little outward, external makeup. And as long as their family dynamic looks good, their yichus means their lineage looks good, everything's perfect to them. But what happens is oftentimes they don't realize, or they do realize, but they ignore the fact that below the surface, internally, there's a very, very ugly part of themselves that has never been dealt with. They have absorbed at some point in their life not good, something negative, a negative trait, issues, skeletons that they never dealt with, and they linger there forever. And if they don't deal with it, you could be sure. The first lesson we learn from the laws of kosher is that what is absorbed below the surface, don't think that it's going to remain below the surface always. One day that issue that has not been dealt with will come out in full force and wreak havoc, perhaps, in their relationships, in their life, in their own happiness, in their own whatever it is. And therefore, when a person absorbs a negative thing, a traumatic experience happens in his life, whether it happened when they were children, whether it happened when they were adolescents, when they were teenagers, whenever it may be, even as an adult, if you ignore it, you can't ignore it. Ignoring it is just covering it up with a little makeup. It's lipstick, but it's not going to cover you. It's going to one day expunge and extract and ruin a lot of good around you. And this is extremely important. A lot of parents make this terrible mistake. They think that as long as I'll find a good match, a good shidduch, a wonderful young girl for my son, or a wonderful young man for my daughter, what happened in her childhood that I know, which we never dealt with. We think that get them married with a nice family, the family dynamic looks good, don't create any problems, get them into a nice family, it'll resolve itself. It'll resolve itself. My friends, sometimes that may be true, and I'm not saying that that it can never happen, that when you start a new life, you start a new track, you get into you refresh, and things do sometimes take care of themselves when you're in a good environment and you're able to, and someone else brings out the best in you. It could happen, but my friends, most of the time it probably doesn't. And to ignore it, all you're doing is causing tremendous. What were you writing?
That's
It festers, exactly. It
and
just
it pushes
causes,
it up like
it
a
will,
little
it will,
squisher.
it's like the non-kosher taste that gets absorbed behind the walls of a clean-looking spoon. But one day when you put that spoon in a hot pot of kosher soup, it's going to extract that non-kosher soup, that non-kosher taste, and ruin your whole soup. Sometimes you take a person who has never dealt with issues when they should have dealt with it, and they thrust them into a new marriage, into a new relationship, a new whatever, a new job, a new environment, and you never dealt with it. Sometimes you don't. You're looking for trouble, and you're looking for a lot of trouble, because when they come out later unresolved, it can ruin a relationship, it can ruin a family, become much worse than it ever was. Um, what I said before, that sometimes these matters can resolve themselves in a good environment situation. That could be. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you have to have tremendous amount of wisdom to know when that's the proper path to deal with an issue, or when you really have to deal with it, open up the inside of this child and clean him out and expunge him and take care of it. You know, this is even if it's true with a machine. You know, sometimes your machine is acting up on you, right? Sometimes your car is acting up on you. You hear a noise, you hear a little things, a little smoke coming out of the engine, and you're rushing to go to Disney World in Orlando, and you want to get on the road, and you're ruining. I don't have time to go out to the mechanic and fix it. And you say, "Don't worry, we'll get onto the road. It's a smooth highway. It's going to be okay." And it'll see what the other cars are doing on the side. It'll want to copy them and emulate the other cars on the road, and it'll drive well. It'll get us to Orlando. Everyone understands that that's the most silly approach. If you have a problem with your engine, you got to open up the hood and fix it. Because if you don't fix it, right now a little smoke is showing. You get onto the highway, and a half hour later, your whole engine can get burned and destroy your whole day, destroy your car, destroy other parts of the machine, and make it even worse. If that's true with a machine, how much more true is that with a human being, who are made up of layers upon layers upon layers of emotions and all kinds of issues we have. And therefore, when something gets absorbed into a human being, whether it's when he was a child or later, it makes no difference. And it doesn't make a difference what level of negative it was. It could be a small negative, it could be big. Deal with these issues. Go to your child and sit him down and get it out. Make sure that you deal with it. Don't just cover it up and say it's going to be fine as long as we got through graduation and he looks like a great kid. I don't want to take him to a psychologist because he's going to be damaged goods, and so on and so forth. So the law, you should mute yourself, anyone that's able to. Now, you may ask, but Rabbi, didn't we learn that in Judaism the main thing is what we do, not so much what goes on in the inside? It's the way we behave. Isn't that the main factor of life? Well, that's true. The Mishnah does say the main thing, amaisa hu ha'ikar, which means the action is what counts at the end of the day. That's the main thing that counts. Because you can be a wonderful person inside, but if you don't know how to behave, then that's what we look at the end of the day. But we all know that in addition to a good outside, we need a good inside. It's not enough that our behavior is good. The whole, at Hasidus, the whole Hasidic movement is in the world for this. That's what Hasidism teaches, to probe deeper, to fix the person internally, to make a person, to rid him of his flaws. And we're all, we have flaws, every one of us, some more, some less. And sometimes these flaws are very unkosher flaws. We absorb unkosher characteristics, unkosher ideas, whether they're intellectual ideas, perceptions, feelings, unkosher loves, unkosher addictions and attractions, and who knows what. So you may say, I'm never going to act on them. Isn't the main thing how I behave? You are right. At the end, what we look at the end of the day is what you do, not so much what you feel. However, with that said, it's important to point out that in Judaism, it's not only what you do. The main thing is how you behave. But as maybe equally important is what's doing on the inside. What kind of person are you? What are you? What's your character? What kind of person are you on the inside? If you're flawed and rotten on the inside, it may not come out now on the outside. But trust me, maybe now you're behaving well. And maybe now you'll be able to control your behavior. But one day that negative character trait that lingers below the surface will come out. There's no question about it. And therefore we must kosher our vessels. And kosher our vessel means we have to kosher our souls. We have to kosher our insides, our character. And how do you do it? So the first thing is we have to know that what lies on the inside is important. Don't ignore it. That's the first thing. There's an unkosher. Elazar tells the people in this parsha that you brought back all these spoils from Midian, and you must not look at the outside of the vessel that looks shiny and glorious and beautiful. You have to know that behind it is an unkosher taste. They used it for non-kosher food. You got to expunge it. You got to make it clean in the sense that you get out what's on the inside. The same thing with your character. A person must know that what's inside is equally as important as what's outside. And we look at both. And that's what all of Hasidism is about, to perfect the inner character. And that's by koshering. The second point we have to know is another terrible mistake people make, and that is that people think that they became not kosher, they became flawed, they absorbed negative traits, they ruined their life, and now it's too late. I'm beyond repair. I can never expunge that negative trait that or negative addiction or negative whatever, that unkosher taste in the metaphor, that unkosher reality within me, I can never expunge it. The second important lesson in life in this portion is from the laws of kashrut is that a person, when you absorb, you can also expunge. It's not too late. A person could fix himself. A person is not stuck. What do we say? You know, the Christians believe in original sin. You know what original sin is? They believe that every person is affected by the original sin of Adam and Eve. That we're born, the devil has a hold on us, right? We're flawed internally forever. Until whenever, until you go up to heaven, back when you finish your life. Judaism doesn't believe in that. What do we say in the morning prayers? Neshama shenatata bi, the neshama that you gave into me. We say this every morning when we wake up. Neshama that you placed into me, what do we say? Tahorahi. It is pure. Your neshama by definition is clean, pure, is good. What you have done over the years, through circumstance, through nurture, through environment, through things that happen, experiences, that you have brought negative stains on your soul. You have maybe negative things that you have absorbed through the years, and they're now lingering below the surface. No one may even see it. And sometimes, even worse, is that the person is suffering from it, doesn't even know that he's suffering from it. And only later, 20 years later, will it come, rear its ugly head and cause havoc in your life. So it's very important to know, number one, that the negative things that we have are absorbed. It's not internally ours from birth. And therefore, just like you absorbed it, you can also extract it and get rid of it. There is hope. You could heal yourself. You can become a mensch. You can become a good person, full of character, flawless. That doesn't mean your Yetzer Hara means the evil inclination, won't bother you. It may bother you. It may, continuously hound you and try to steer you off the right way. But I'm talking about deep psychological flaws that we have absorbed in our life because of experiences and negative, traumatic things that happen to us, or less traumatic, but whatever they may be, because we have given in too much to sin or given in too much to self-centered pursuit, and we've given in too much to ourselves, and that caused us to be a little bit more selfish, and that changes us. That makes us more thinking more about ourselves than others, and that's a flaw. But that's absorbed. That's absorbed. That is not there from birth, and therefore, just like you absorbed it, you could get rid of it. Just like Elazar told him, you can take those vessels and get rid of the bad negative taste, and that's not a problem. Now, that's the second point. And the third point is, how do you in other words, I think before we get to the third point, the second point still on the second, that you could fix yourself. If you can ruin yourself, if you have the power to ruin yourself or others, you can also fix yourself. If you have that power, you have the power to do good as well, to build. And it's extremely important to remember that. The third point is, how do you rid yourself? How do you expunge yourself from a negative experience, from a negative trait, from a negative addiction, from a negative feeling, from something bad that happens to you? How do you do it? So the third law that Elazar told us this week in this parsha is, in the laws of kashrut, that just in the same way you absorbed it, that's how you expunge it. What does that mean? I want to say a couple of things about this, because this is very important in the way we deal with our own children, sometimes with our own family members and others. For example, you have a child that went through a traumatic experience. Let me not over dramatize it. Something, they're experiencing something negative in their life. They're having trouble in school. They're having trouble with friends. Things are not going right, and it's there. They feel that they don't have love in their life. No one cares for them. They go around thinking, I don't count. They're not important. They feel less about themselves, and so on and so forth. And sometimes when it's not detected, and you don't deal with it, what happens is you neglect it. Not only have you not helped that child, but you perhaps have made his life even worse, because a little kid has little problems. A big kid has big problems. And someone that has big problems, that's a worse, that, when they're bigger, they have a bigger problem, and you make, and the problem gets even worse. Now, how do you deal with a problem? So there's a number of philosophies. There's a number of ways that people deal with these issues. You either go to a psychologist, or the parent, becomes a shtickle psychologist, a little bit of a psychologist, and you talk to your child. You try to open him up. You try to open him up or her up, and you try to analyze it from every which way. You try to get to the core, the root of the problem. Right? You try to get into his inner nook, every nook and cranny of his soul, of his psyche, of his feelings, of his whatever. That may work, and sometimes it does. The problem with that is, and I've seen this happen, is a lot of times the process becomes, you become so hooked on the process that you really never even get to the core problem to really heal it. Psychology, I got my appointment with my psychiatrist, and that never ends. For 20 years you keep going. They're trying to finally analyze you from every which way, and you never get there, because you get so caught up in the process that it's like you're trying to, there's so many ditches on the way that you fall into the ditch. You don't ever get to the, you get lost in the process sometimes. I'm not discounting that. I'm not discounting it entirely. I'm not saying there's no room for psychoanalysis to the nth degree to really get to the core and open them up and extract it and get it out. It could work. It could also not work. There's pitfalls with that. We know that psychology today is one of the biggest, most reliable businesses today in the West. Why is that? Because the psychologists sometimes keep them coming, right? It's a never-ending process. I haven't yet figured it out, and you have. We have to figure you out, right? It's a never-ending thing. There's another way of dealing with negative experiences of the past, where a person suffers from a past experience, is you try to convince them. What you have to focus is on your behavior patterns. Develop a healthy behavioral pattern. Live like a mensch. Live good. Do the right thing. Develop a good behavioral, a good style, a lifestyle. Do exercise in the morning. Care for yourself, for your health. Make sure that, and sometimes you can divert the person into that process of thinking, of behavior, and he is able to manage life. He feels good about those aspects of life. You divert his attention from the negative, and you give him a positive outlook in life, and you give him some mission in life, and you can steer him in a good direction, where for years and years he can go and be a healthy human being. Sometimes that works too. But the beauty of this halacha about koshering a vessel, that third point, which is kebeloi kach peilte, which means the way it absorbed is the way it will extract. Like we said before, if the non-kosher taste was absorbed in the walls of a pot through boiling water, all you need is a boiling water to get it out. If the substance that absorbed, if the substance that we absorbed is through the application of fire itself, then you need fire itself to extract the negative taste, right? Like by a barbecue. A barbecue, the treif barbecue absorbed the treif taste of the non-kosher meat that was fried over there and roasted there through fire itself, not through boiling water. So for there, you need to apply the same level of fire and to get it out, okay? So that's the principle, the way it absorbed, that's how it's going to expunge. How is that applied? How can we apply that in the psychological level that we're talking now, in the human on the human level? What happens is, what happens oftentimes, how do we absorb? How do we become, I don't want to use this bad word, but let's say a kid, he's mistreated, he's traumatized, right? And he becomes damaged, he becomes hurt, he becomes, something goes into him deep, and he's feeling inadequate, and he loses his, even sometimes it's as bad as losing his interest in life itself. How do you heal such a kid? So you got to see, what happened to him? How did it happen? How did it happen to him? Well, you got to say, okay, so let's say someone said something to him that was very, very nasty. Right? A kid, he was bullied in the class. He was bullied in his classroom, in the lunchroom, and we're out on the bus. And over and over and over and over, and no one paid attention. And he's now taking this in again and again and again, and he feels he's getting worse and worse, and he comes home, he doesn't tell anything to his parents. They don't pay attention to him because parents are busy with their own lives. And whatever it is, before you know it, a year later, you see he's starting to fail in his grades, and he's starting to become less social, and he's losing touch with his friends and the people around him, and he's not, and you see, what's wrong? Danny, what happened? No, everything's fine. But you know that there's something wrong, and before you know it, it's a crisis, and it could be a real crisis. So you have to go back. What caused this? A bad experience with a friend. Someone bullied him. Or let's say you get married. Yeah, let's give another example. You get married, and your in-laws are not treating you well. You have a nasty brother-in-law, and every time you come over, he he stings you with a negative. He doesn't like the way you look. He doesn't like the way you behave. He doesn't like certain things about you, and he doesn't like you, period. And he lets you know it every time he sees you. And you start feeling inadequate. You start feeling like you're nobody. Because that's your new family. Let's say you don't have a family of your own, and you really, that's all you have. You are hoping I'll marry this wonderful person, and I'll be embraced by a new family, and this is what happens. Or you go to a new job, and the first mistake you make, or not even a mistake, they thought you made a mistake, your boss starts ridiculing you and embarrassing you in front of everyone. You need the job because you don't have a way to pay your bills, so you stick it out there. And little by little, you're becoming more and more affected by this. And you become abused, and you become a shmata, and you become a doormat. And later on, when you start having relationships with others, you don't feel that you're able to get into a normal, because I'm a nobody. I'm a doormat for other people, and I allowed myself to become a doormat. So how could you have a healthy relationship with someone else? And you can't sometimes. And you start feeling like a nobody. So the law, this is so now what happens is you become, there's something bad going on inside. You feel terrible. There's something they ruined they ruined your emotions, they ruined the way you feel about yourself. How do you heal that? How do you get rid of that attitude? How do you get rid of that? So here's a basic rule, and I wanted you to follow me on this, if you can, with attention. What you have to do is, as a general rule in life, usually what happened to us in the past will happen to us again in the future. Things don't happen in our lives once. Very seldom do things happen in our life and then they never happen again. Things keep coming back. If not today, in a year, in a month. If not in a month, in a year. If not in a year, in a 10-year, it will come back. These things happen again. You're not getting rid of it so fast. What you have to do is, the next time it happens, you have to decide that you're going to deal with this in a very different way than you dealt with it the first time it happened. You in a job, your boss is being nasty to you, or your brother-in-law is saying a negative remark to you. Until now, you became insular and you shut up and you didn't have anything to say and you took it in and you felt negative and you felt, was something wrong with me? You looked yourself in the mirror. Do I not look? Do I look bad? What's wrong with me? And you took it on yourself, and there's nothing wrong with you. But you feel that there's something wrong with you, so you start feeling about yourself. You get a terrible sense of self. What you have to do is that the very next time it happens, the way you absorbed it, that's how you extract it. Meaning, when that happens to you again, you have to take a new approach and decide that I'm not going to allow that to become even more deeper absorbed in myself. I'm going to expunge it. I'm going to deal with it in a very different way. In other words, instead of it going this way, I'm going to make sure it goes the other way. Meaning, I'm going to ignore it or not ignore it, but say something. And in the moment when it could be absorbed, you get rid of it. The same level of fire that caused it to absorb first, that's the same level of fire. The moment that it happens again, you expunge it by taking a different attitude towards the issue. By responding completely differently. It's up to you. And that, my friends, is the healthiest way. You don't need this deep the reason we need deep psychoanalysis sometimes and all these things is because we didn't deal with it that way. But imagine we would. You took control of yourself. What caused you to feel like a shmata? My nasty brother-in-law. Then when it happens again, you don't let it do that. You turn right back at it. And you don't let that become the way you define yourself. So there are three things over here. There are three things over here. First thing, you have to believe that it's not, you must take care of in your inside, it's not enough your external beautiful looks. What lingers inside will not linger inside for long. They will come out. And when they do, they will create havoc in your life and in other people's lives. You can't just brush things under the carpet. When smoke starts coming out of your engine, you don't shut the hood, you open it even further and you look deep into it and you fix it. Because it will cause problems. Second thing is, you have to know that you could kosher a vessel. A vessel doesn't become tray forever. If you apply you do the right thing to it, you could get rid of negative experiences. And the way to rid yourself of negative experiences is to catch the moment. The Rambam, he says like this. Maimonides said, what's the real way to repent? Repentance. A person does a terrible sin. And the Rambam gives the example of someone that was unfaithful in his marriage. Not in his marriage, sorry. He acted immoral with a woman. So you can come home and a day later you feel terrible that you did such a thing. Terrible. And you cry and you pour out your heart to God. I promise you, God, I'll never do it. And again, this is a terrible thing. I recognize my mistake, and you can be certain that I'll never do it again. And he means it. He means it. He really does. He has real regret, and he repented for his terrible sin. Is that a good repentance? What do you think?
No.
Why do you say no?
Still there. It's just sublimated.
What's still there?
Underneath. The guilt.
No, the guilt is there, but the tshuva I'm talking about is repentance. I forget. What is tshuva is that you feel guilty that you did such a thing, and you regret it terribly, and you apologize to God that you did such a thing, and you promise him never to do it again. What you're saying is he will still have the temptation. Fine, he may have the temptation, but he won't act on the temptation. Having temptation is not a sin. It's acting on the temptation that's sinful. So if a person says, I'm never going to do it again, and he means it, you can trust him. No? Unless you're saying we can't trust him. But I'm talking about a person you could trust. He's sincere. Is that a good tshuva? The Rambam says that is a proper tshuva, but it's not complete tshuva yet. It's not the most perfect tshuva. You know what he says is the most perfect tshuva, a complete tshuva? Is when that woman, when he's back in the same exact situation, when he sinned, and this time he doesn't sin. And this time he doesn't. That means he was presented with the same opportunity to slip, to fall, and he's strong, his character, he overcomes the temptation, and I'm not doing it. And he's clean, he's moral, and he doesn't do it. So it means that now, not only did he regret what he did, and he made a promise never to do again, and he cried his heart out, which is a good, which we can trust him. Now, once he went through the same exact experience with the same woman, he says, no, now we know that he's sincere. That's the complete tshuva, because when you're back to where it was, the way you absorb the negative is the same way you're going to expunge it. What happened when he sees this woman again and he's secluded in a room alone with her and things can happen again and he says no? That means what happens is the thing that caused the negative, he's turning it around. He's not letting it, he's getting the contrary. The very thing that caused him to become treif last time is the very thing that's causing him not to become a complete Baal Tshuva. You understand what I'm saying? He's becoming this very experience, that very same situation that last time made him treif. Now the Rambam is saying, this moment when he expunges it, and he says, no, I'm not going to do it, that's the moment where he got rid of that negative experience of the past, and he's clean. That makes him a complete Baal Tshuva. That's what the Rambam says. Unless he's in the same circumstance and he turns it around and he doesn't fall in, then we know that he did Tshuva. That means it's the very fire that made him not kosher now makes him even more kosher. This is a perfect Tshuva. So it's the same thing with psychology. It's the same thing with any negative, traumatic experience. You have to get it. You have to recreate the situation. Not yet. You have to pursue. No one's going to go and say, go find that woman and put yourself in a room alone with her and don't. No, no one's going to say, no one crazy is going to do that. But if it happens again, circumstances bring them together again. And he has the opportunity to slip again, and he doesn't. It's the same thing psychologically. When that thing is recreated again, and here's the lesson. Most things in life will come again and again and again. Things don't happen only once. If they happen once, they're going to happen again. And what you have to do is take that moment when it happens again and expunge it. And have a different attitude, react completely different towards it, and that will get rid of the problem. That alone will heal the problem. That will turn the vessel into a kosher vessel. The very negative experience that became absorbed in you will be expunged. And that's how life works. That's how life works. That's how life works.
Rabbi, that's so complicated, though. If you put a child in this equation,
Go ahead. Explain.
Unlike the car, that the car is inanimate, so you have a problem and you fix it. But you can have a child that's resistant, doesn't open up, no matter what you do. No matter what your involvement with that child is, and they just don't open up, they keep it all inside. You don't know if they've been bullied, you don't know what the problem is.
It's not easy. No, I agree with you, it's not easy. Sometimes it's so deep, and like you're saying, a child sometimes doesn't open up, so sometimes what's required is analyzing, taking him to a professional, analyzing him. There's no doubt about it. There's room for that, I'm saying that. But even better is when he himself, now it's not easy when they're children. This method that I just presented to you.
It's really for adults.
It's for adults more. Yeah, I agree with you. Or an adult helping the child when it happens again. If you can find out what's bothering this child, and you can walk him through the process and teach him how to expunge it when it happens again, right there to develop a new attitude, a different attitude, it could work, but it's much harder. I agree with you. When a kid is a kid, you need more protection. You don't want to subject them, and you never want to subject people to a negative experience. But if it happens, and usually things do happen again. I mean, that's what life has taught us, that when things happen, they keep happening. And you have to learn that when they happen again, even though you messed up the first time, the second time it happens, you grab a hold of yourself and you turn it around completely. And that's the moment you get healing. That's the moment you get healing. It's much better than psychoanalysis. You go in and you try to heal the negative emotion. Sometimes you get rid of the negative emotion when it happens again and he responds differently. Kabbalah, the way it absorbed the negative taste, that's how it goes. Is what we have over here is a marvelous teaching. You look at an ancient Bible, the story of the Torah, which Elazar is talking to the troops that came back from the war, and he tells them, he teaches them this truth. When you read it at face value, oh yeah, they brought vessels, he told them what to do, and it's great, yeah. What lies in here is there's so many layers of beautiful truths that relate to the core essence of human experience, that we learn from this great lessons of how to deal with life. There's so much life lessons in every single verse of this Torah. And we just have to have the wisdom, the ability to extract and to learn and to develop and to get it out, to extract the beautiful lessons that are in. In this particular case, the lesson of how to deal with negative experiences. The three-pronged process. Number one, don't ignore them. Number two, believe you can get rid of them. And number three, how to get rid of them. Putting up a nice face and putting on lipstick is not going to do anything. Any questions, my dear friends?
That's even good for someone that's addicted to something.
100%. But addiction is already a little bit more complicated because And
Yes.
addiction is not,
Right.
addiction is not a simple thing. And, but even addiction, you could get rid of addictions. You could. It's not easy. Depends what addiction. There are very bad addictions. Internet addiction is terrible. Drug addiction is terrible. They say internet addiction is worse than drug addiction. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but they say that. I don't know if it's true. I don't know the studies on it. But either way, whether it's worse or not, it's bad enough. We all know that. And we don't realize how much we're addicted to this. It's incredible. You look at kids today. It's terrible. The addictions to the screen. It's nonstop. I'm not even talking about bad things. I'm talking about the screen itself, the screen of their phone. I'm not talking about bad things. I'm talking about innocent things. They're just addicted to this machine.
But did you notice during the demonstrations, I think one of the things, a positive thing that you could talk about it if you can find something positive, is that the children were no longer on their cell phones and they were no longer sitting in front of their computers. They were meeting other young people, and it was fun.
Who wasn't on their cell phones?
Now, I'm talking about there were some good people, some good young people demonstrating peacefully. I'm talking
That. Yeah, that's
the
very
ones
good.
looting.
That's very good. There's nothing wrong.
Yeah,
If you want to, no problem.
they had never experienced that before, being in a group and not having their
Yeah.
cell phone involvement.
We all know the problem, the ills of society today. But it's important that we look ourselves in the mirror and find our own flaws and our own, taste that has been absorbed through the years. And we could get rid of them, and we should get rid of them, and the way to get rid of them. And that's what we have to do. We must get a hold of ourselves and become better people internally. It's not enough to just behave good. And that's important, don't get me wrong. At the end of the day, that's what counts the most. But we want to go probe a little deeper to make myself a better person internally. Who's the person that's looking in the mirror? What's going on inside? Are we okay with having flaws inside? Are we not okay? We shouldn't be okay with it. And you could get rid of it. And that's what life is about. To work on yourself and to perfect yourself and to heal yourself and to become a better person. And that's hard work. It's very easy to behave good. It's not so easy to behave good either, let's be honest. But it's much easier to behave good than to become internally good. You could be a nice person, right? Let's take an example of Ahavat Yisrael. You could be a nice person. You could behave nice to people. But you don't really have it internally. You don't enjoy behaving good to people, being kind to people. Your mother taught you that you should be kind to another person. So you're going to be kind to another person, but it's not who you are. It doesn't come natural to you. Isn't that a problem? Shouldn't that bother us? I should enjoy doing a kindness to someone else. Not just because my mother told me to do it, so I force myself to do it. And I force myself, really. And I do it. And people would consider me, oh, such a nice person. Not enough. We should be nice internally. We should be full of chesed. We should be kind-hearted people, not just kind hands and feet. We should be kind-hearted. And that's a whole different world. What?
You're talking about intrinsic and
Intrinsic.
extrinsic
Yes, exactly.
motivation.
That's exactly right.
Intrinsic is always the stronger. And
The motivation should not be to impress my mother, or my teacher, or my God,
Right.
even my God. It should be because that's who I am. That's my nature, to be a kind person. And then when you are that person, then you're looking to be kind to people. When you enjoy something, and it's the same with a lot of different character traits. Whether it's temptation for bad. Imagine a person goes around a whole life. Imagine a marriage. Take a marriage, for example, yeah? Imagine a person doesn't see eye to eye with his spouse or her spouse on most things. But it's my wife, it's my husband, so I'm going to give in to whatever they say I'm going to do. I'm going to, she likes the color blue, she wants blue window shades. we'll get blue window shades. The fact that I hate blue window shades, I'm going to put my wants on the side and go with her taste. Or where our children, how we want to raise our children. Or whatever it may be. Imagine you don't see eye to eye with your spouse on 50% of the things in life. But you are always 100% of the time you're following, and you give in. On the more, certainly on, you're a mensch about it. You give in, that's what she wants, if that's what he wants, I'll go along. I love him, I love her, whatever she wants, that's what I'm going to do. But imagine you don't see eye to eye with her on most things, or 50% of the time. You're going to say to yourself one day, wait a minute, how long, does this have a relationship? Why don't I see eye to eye with my wife on most things? How long does it take to become of one mind and one heart? It's supposed to. It's supposed to. And sometimes if it doesn't. So that's what I mean internally. So when a person sees, imagine now let's talk about God. Yeah? God wants me to behave in a certain way.
And do you want the pasta?
Elsa, if you want to mute yourself, Elsa, please mute yourself.
Oh my God.
Don't worry, you didn't say anything wrong. It's a dangerous machine, this, let me tell you.
Sorry. I thought you would.
It's okay, don't worry.
Who is Elsa? The phone keeps coming up on my screen.
Imagine with God. God gave us 613 mitzvahs, right? I want you to keep Shabbos. I want you to put on tefillin for me. I want you to pray to me. I want you to give charity. I want you to eat matzah on Passover. I want you to keep whatever, any mitzvah. And imagine you really don't have an interest in observing Shabbos. You don't like to keep kosher. You don't like to keep Shabbos. You don't like to put on tefillin. But you're a Jew. So you say, that's what God wants. That's what I'm going to do. But every time you do it, you don't, it's not something you enjoy. You do it because you have, the yoke of heaven is upon you. You accepted it. Whatever God wants, that's what I do. But am I there? Is that my want? No. That is a very bad place to be, wouldn't you think? That is not the ideal experience of Judaism. Eventually, you want to have an experience of Judaism where you see eye to eye with God. You see eye to eye with him. If he likes it, I like it, like in a relationship. If you're in a relationship with someone, then eventually you want to think like that person. You want to feel like that person. And I go back to a relationship between a husband and wife. Imagine where they're on two different wavelengths, even though they love each other and they do for each other whatever the other asks, but they're not on the same page. They don't like doing that. They like, bad place to be. That's not the ideal relationship. So that's so that's on the deeper level. In other words, when you're talking about character traits and flawed character, if God despises treif and I find treif delicious, there's a very big schism between me and God's heart. We love opposites. When you're in a relationship, you should not love opposites. You should love the same things. You hope that you get there one day. And if life goes through and you don't get there, it's time to examine yourself. What's wrong? And that's what life is. We're made up of a negative. We have an evil inclination that schleps us in every which way, in every direction of negative. And that's the challenge of life, to overcome that, but not only overcome it in behavior, but eventually overcome it internally as well. That you start liking what God likes. Are you going to become a holy, righteous tzaddik? No. But you can develop more and more and more. And that's what life is about. And we have internally lingering, negative, non-kosher traits. And it's time to kosher yourself. And that's the 3 lessons of this week's Parsha. What's inside is important. It's not only your behavior that's important, but what lingers behind the walls of the surface of this fork and knife and pot are important, or in the human experience. Second lesson is you could become kosherized. It's not too late. If you messed up, you can fix. And then how to do it. Application of the same experience. That's when you expunge it. Like the Rambam says, when you're faced with the same exact challenge and you choose not to do it, that means at the moment where you got burnt the first time, now you expunge that negative taste, and your tshuva becomes a perfect tshuva. So you went from being treif to becoming fully kosher, and that's how it works. The same exact experience. That's when you got to expunge it. Not any other time by going to a psychologist who's going to go crawl into your psyche and figure out what's wrong with you. It could take 30 years till that happens, and a lot of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and maybe he'll get there, maybe he won't. This is a better way. So I wish you all the best, and thank you for joining us today. And next Monday we have a special program. I hope you all got the email today, right? If you didn't see it yet, take a look at it. There's a very special program in honor of the period of time that we're living in now, that we're the time of year, which is the 3 weeks of mourning. We are mourning the destruction of the temple during these 3 weeks. It started last Thursday, and it will go to till 3 weeks later with the 9th of Av. During these 3 weeks, it's customary to learn and focus a little bit more on the topic of the Beis Hamikdash, the Holy Temple, and Jerusalem. So I have a program on Monday night where a expert in archaeology is going to make a full presentation on Jerusalem and the Holy Temple Mount, and it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be really, really beautiful, and it's going to be this coming Monday night at 7:45 on Zoom, and I sent out, it's not the same Zoom link as this class, so don't make that mistake. I sent a Zoom link in today's email, and we'll go out again on Monday morning, another email with the link. Today you went with one link. It's whatever. It's different Zoom link. That's all.
I tried that link and it didn't.
Well, it's not working yet. I have to open up the meeting a half hour before on Monday at 7:15. I'll open that meeting. Yeah. Okay, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you for watching.
You too. Thank
All
you very
those
much.
Facebook Live watchers, thank you, and all the best to everyone.
Good night. Thank you so much.
This class, by the way, started at 7:30 today, and if that confused you, I apologize. It was a mistake. The secretary sent out 7:30, so I didn't want to change it,
Oh, okay.
That's okay. Nothing happened. All the best, everyone. Huh?
Thank you very much.
Laila Tov.